Looks like Practitioner Sunday to me. Yes, indeed. Please welcome Dale Williams, our moderator, and Vera Carter, Will Mathis, and Richard Moy. Yes.
We would like to welcome everyone to Practitioner Sunday. Our topics will be coming from the CSL Book of the Month, Stained Glass Spirit. And the topics that we will be discussing today, will be speaking on diversity. Vera will be speaking on unique but different. And Richard will be speaking on oneness beyond, inclusion beyond oneness. Today's topic, we will have 4 practitioners, as you see up here, including myself. With the world today, with today's social, economic, and political climate, we find that the information that we will discuss with you today will be most appropriate. We are a spiritual community where oneness does not equal sameness. We are practitioners. As practitioners, we are servants of highly expanded spiritual consciousness. Spiritual mind treatment, spiritual mind healing is based on the theory that there is a divine presence overseeing us all and that it responds to our thoughts according to universal law. So my first question to the panel today. So I ask, why is the recognition of oneness necessary for the survival and the preservation of the human race? And my question to you is, what does metaphysics and science of mind speak on oneness? Will?
Thank you, Dale. Science of the mind says we're rooted in the one. We all come from the same source, but it produces limitless variety. We're all unique. We're all different. But knowing we come from one source, that uniqueness never changes. We can always realize that we're a divine creation. And I believe for humanity, once we realize that, then I believe we each can live in the utopia that we've always dreamed of.
Thank you, Vera.
Thanks. So the question about how our oneness kind of shows up and how we can allow that to bind us together is what I'm hearing you ask. And of course, we know that the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook really lays out, how we are one and how, and for me, what I really connect with is that above and beyond all the appearances, that there are some fundamental things that we really want as humans, as beings, and that the impulse, what wakes us up in the morning, what kind of makes us desire to move and have a particular life is the same impulse. That's the oneness in my mind. Ernest Holmes, he outlines all of it, but for me personally, that's it, that we all, our hearts have that same kind of rhythm. And to the degree, which we've all heard many times before, of our willingness to acknowledge that the same heartbeat that beats in me beats in every single other person, every single person on this planet, that is the oneness. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you, Vera. Richard?
I've been a teacher's assistant for Susan Zoller's class, The Power of Decision, and Raymond Charles Barker talks about who we are as people, and that we are actually not the bodies that we live in, but that we are pure consciousness. Pure consciousness extends beyond our bodies. Pure consciousness is everywhere. There is no separation between where you end and someone else begins. So that is what oneness truly is. You are invisible. Not only are you invisible, but you are immeasurable. I'd like to read from The Power of Decision. It says, "You, as the consciousness of the infinite, are seeking to know yourself not as divisibility, but as unity. The whole person leaves aside the person to see himself as the all. Such intuitive perception is not only for the mystics and sages, it is for you as well. It leads to total freedom from struggle, strain, and fear. It is wonderful." So I believe as we recognize that oneness, that we are all indeed one, our consciousness intermingles and is one, then that's how it will help us in the future to preserve mankind, is that it frees us from struggle, strain, and fear.
Thank you, Richard. So, Will, back to you. Before we begin our talk, what does diversity mean to you?
Well, first of all, when I got the topic for me was diversity, the first thing that came into my mind was the song from Sesame Street, "One of Us Is Not Like the Other." And it consumed me. So to change my thought, I looked at the dictionary, old school way. Merriam-Webster says it's a state of being, difference, unlikeness, and variety. Personally, I believe that diversity begins at conception. The minute we're conceived, we're a unique expression in form and in mind. We're here to be the soul that we choose to be, but yet we have a divine energy that's created us. Life always unfolds. We are diverse from race consciousness. However we have our diversity, I'm constantly reminded that we're still one. Our teaching says that we are one. We're all created by the same power. And so for diversity, I see it as a difference, but yet a sameness.
Thank you, Will. And my second question for you, I feel like diversity is everywhere, but how can our thoughts about diversity affect us?
Diversity, one of the effects of diversity, I believe, is we experience diversity through race consciousness. We have a prejudice about things, and it's not a racism, it's a prejudice. These things are learned through, again, race consciousness. I invite you to think about how you may treat a server in a restaurant, or how you may treat someone that doesn't look like you, or someone that dresses differently. Sit somewhere sometime and just listen to the thoughts in your head that come up. We all know we're one. This teaching teaches we're one, but somehow within us, we still have this idle chit-chat that's judging or making preconceived notions of someone is different, when in truth, we're all one. Life is always evolving. We're always changing. We're always expressing. So there is no right or wrong. It's always our expression, our diversity that keeps this world unique, keeps us unique, and personally makes it a really great place to live.
Thank you, Will. I thought I was the only one that had that chatter in my head, but okay, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Okay. Okay, Vera, I have two questions for you. The first question is, as practitioners, why is unique but different something we must be aware of in our science of mind practice?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dale. Thanks for asking. And really, in short, it's really the way of the world, right? I mean, we can see diverse. I mean, we can see this notion of being unique but different. Actually, kind of, that is how the world actually works. If we all looked the same and wore the same, it would not be what we currently experience it as. And so for me, I say that a little jokingly, but seriously, I think unique but different is an aspect that actually makes us stronger, right? And what I mean by that is, just like the Amazon has all of these animals and plants and fauna and all of these unique things, its strength is in all of the diverse elements of itself. And all of these pieces kind of work together to make it unique and to allow it to contribute to the whole. So what I see in our community, my work with the nominating committee actually has helped me to see how we at SLCA have actually demonstrated this. From my perspective, just kind of being both an observer and being engaged in this process, it allowed me to see that we brought people, the board brought people from so many different elements of SLCA, right? So we had, of course, Black folks represented, we had white folks represented, we had LGBT represented, we had people from different religious backgrounds and perspectives. We had entrepreneurs, we had people that work for the government, we had ex-military. And so all of us brought a very unique perspective based on our upbringing, based on what we've learned, based on how we've navigated in the world, but yet in bringing all of that together, we could focus on the task that was before us. And so from my perspective, I really do think that it's in our uniqueness that actually can be the foundation that makes us stronger. And that's what I would offer. I'm reading the book by Tracy Brown called Stained Glass Spirit. She says that ignoring the beauty and value and uniqueness of different types of people is equivalent to ignoring God and refusing to see all the ways that God shows up in humanity. She goes on to say, it's kind of funny that we don't do this with dogs, we don't do this with flowers, we don't do this with any species, but for some reason with humans we want to all have the sameness, and it's actually not represented in nature. So I think that the call for us is pretty clear. Ernest Holmes, he says that yes, we are all unique. We all bring different perspectives. We are all one of a kind. Like there's not going to be another Richard exactly like Richard, or Will, or Vera. And so we might meet people with those names, but never all of the elements that make us exactly who we are. And that's the beauty, that's the strength, that's what we want to bring forward. And so, like I said, Ernest Holmes, what he said was, we are a unique variation in the universe. No two people are alike. He says, but yet people are rooted in that which is identical, right? So identical being, well, that force, that energy, that presence that is consistent through all of us. Richard talked about it. We're all talking about elements of it, but that's essentially it. It is that God spirit that is within us, that great spirit that is within us, that harmonizes us, that brings us together. That is where our strength lies. That is how we are all connected, and we can celebrate our uniqueness, the various expressions that we bring here every single week. And contribute to make our world an even bigger and better place. Does that answer your question?
Sounds good to me. Sound like you knocked the ball out the park. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the billions of people that we have on the planet, that we all have a heart, we all have lungs, we all have skin, but we all have a unique fingerprint. We have our own print that God loves us so much and the universe loves us so much that it takes care of everything and it allows us to be our own individual. As long as we be it with love, it's a lot better for the world. It's the second question. How do you blend unique but difference in a world of conflict while striving for universal oneness?
Yeah, that's a good one, Dale.
I sort of snuck that in on you.
Yeah, just ease that in there a little bit. Well, you know, we're human, so we know that conflict is going to happen, right? Because we all have different ideas, we all have different perspectives, we all sometimes bring that, and it's filtered through whatever our experience is, right? And so I think it's important that even as we address whatever the conflict is internally, right? Like as a starting point, like what's my piece in this, right? Then that if we're willing, because we have to be willing to actually look at that and own it as ourselves, right? Like I have to say, oh, you know, this is my stuff that's kind of pulling up and pushing up that I need to address. But the other part of that is having a seat at the table, right? So what I think is that, again, I have to go back to the nominating committee because it was for me personally an excellent demonstration of having everybody's voice heard in meaningful ways, in ways in which people feel like they can be honored, they can be respected, that they are not just somebody's speaking on their behalf, but they can actually say, no, this is how I feel, this is what I think, and I think this is important, and this is why I think this is important. So, for me, I would say that unique but different in a world of universal oneness, it's important that we remember that all of these different voices, and this is again from Tracy Brown, she says that all of these different voices contribute to a lively and inspiring collective experience. I'm not who I am simply because I am who I am. I am who I am along with everybody that is in my community. By being here, you know what has been really inspiring to me is when I come to SLCA and I see someone completely for who they are, because people are willing to be whoever they are. It really inspires me. It actually strengthens me and helps me to become more of who I am rather than less. So I believe that while we can celebrate our own unique individual aspects, that when we come together, that really helps us to blossom. It provides an avenue, it provides an awareness, a greater awareness. It allows ideas to thrive. It allows, you know, conscious awareness to grow simply because we can bring all of those aspects of ourselves here together. So.
Thank you, Vera.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay, Richard Moy, I have two questions for you, sir. Richard, if we recognize and embrace diversity, don't we run the risk of creating a sense of otherness? What is your opinion on that?
So, yes, if we are celebrating diversity, celebrating differences in people, are we just giving into or supporting that is the other person? They're different from us, so are they the other? That's a hard line to walk, is how do you celebrate that diversity and difference without creating an other? I think it all goes back to that oneness principle that we were talking about earlier. Inclusion beyond otherness is oneness. So while we can celebrate those differences that Vera was talking about, if we look back to the recognition that we are pure consciousness, every one of us, then we can move beyond those differences or that diversity and connect on a much deeper soul level. This reminds me of a story that I heard recently. I was listening to a podcast from the CSL in Santa Rosa, and Reverend Ruth Barnhart was speaking, and she told a story of about herself. Of one day she was having a really bad day. She was in a bad relationship that was ending, and she just got up on the wrong side of the bed, and everything was happening the way she didn't want it to happen, and she was just down in the dumps. She decided she'd get out of the house and go grab a bite to eat. Maybe that would cheer her up or shift things in the universe. And so she went to a restaurant and sat down by herself and was being served. She said that she noticed the waitress came by her, making her way to the door because a man who was obviously homeless was walking in. And the waitress was dealing with him and talking with him, and the man didn't seem to react to her, but just came right on in and actually sat down right beside Reverend Ruth. And she was like, great. Of all days. She said that she immediately went into fervent prayer, and she said it sounded something like this. She said, my God, what is happening? Why is this man coming in, and why is he sitting right next to me in my space? I don't believe that I could be hexed, but if there was any day that I could be hexed, this would be the day. Please just make him leave. The man then began wailing his hands around and hissing at people and just making strange noises, and she couldn't ignore him any longer, and she said she saw something out of the side of her eyes, and so she turned and she looked at him head on, straight on. And she said she didn't see a homeless man. She saw glowing, shimmering light all around him. And she realized, wow, we really are all one. We are made of the same stuff. That really struck me because so often we are faced with people that we don't want to associate with or consider that we are one with them because of all the differences that we encounter or that rub us the wrong way. But like Raymond Charles Barker said, we are all pure consciousness. There is no end to myself and where you begin. We are one, truly. In fact, one way I think about it is if you think about quantum physics, quantum theory actually says that we are all one. We are made of all the same stuff, stardust. In fact, I was reading somewhere where you could even say that there's a little bit of Marilyn Monroe in you. We all breathe the same air, and the atoms that have always been in existence from the beginning of time are still floating around in space and in our bodies. And some of the air that Marilyn Monroe has breathed and those atoms are perhaps in your body right now. That being said, there are also atoms of probably Hitler in your body right now as well. But we are all one. So, yes, if we can get to that deeper level, then we can realize that the diversity, the differences in us, good or bad, are all the individual expressions of God, and that deep down we are all one, and just focus on that principle of oneness.
Thank you, Richard. My second question, how does one live inclusively and transcend the boundaries of otherness?
I think I have some notes on this. Well, living inclusively and transcending the boundaries of otherness. Ernest Holmes gave us the answer. He said, "The one who understands the science of mind will be tolerant, kind, and empathetic. We are students of science of mind here, and that is some good advice. The way we transcend otherness is by being tolerant, kind, and empathetic toward those differences that seem to rub us the wrong way, or that repel us even. Transcending the boundaries of otherness requires us, quite frankly, to grow up, to mature, to move from being independent to learning and the advantages of being interdependent. And just like Vera said earlier, recognizing that those differences that we all have can actually be a plus. When you put two different people together, the ideas that come out of that collaboration of working together can be better than the ideas that come out of just the one. So how do we mature and become interdependent rather than being dependent? Is we have to embrace that oneness, embrace that principle of oneness, and we do that through our spiritual practice. Another way that we can do that is to release judgment of others. Otherness is actually rooted in judgment. When we see other as being separate from ourselves, we're judging. Or we may even be judging ourselves, and that's why we feel separate, why we feel different from others. So if we release all of that judgment of ourselves as well as others, then we can embrace that principle of oneness. As Vera said, recognizing the divinity within ourselves and in others. As we said, if we are denying the individuality of another person, we're actually denying the God expressing through them. So remembering to recognize that. The Four Agreements has a couple of notes on how to go about that. I'll let you take the class to learn about that. One of my favorite books is by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he talks about some habits that you can incorporate in your life that help you to become more interdependent and to recognize the collaboration of oneness with all. One of those habits is think win-win. Seek first to understand and then be understood. Using empathic listening to really understand others and to know what they're going through and to feel compassion and love toward them. And the last one that he lists is the 6th habit is synergize. Recognize others' ideas with an open mind. Consider that there may be a third way of thinking that might emerge through that collaboration, and that different ideas may emerge that are better than the one, like I said earlier. And Vera gave a great example of that within our nominating committee here, of all the different ideas coming together and collaborating to create something bigger than just the individual ideas alone.
Thanks, Richard. You know, I understand today that separation only exists in the mind of the person that believes it. That God is all there is, and it's all God. And if it's all God and God is all there is, we're included in that wholeness, that wellness, that completeness, that blissfulness, that whole, all the benefits that are available, we get to experience them at the level of our consciousness. You know, so when I said earlier that I thought, looking at the economic climate and the social climate, that I thought these questions were appropriate, that we are one. We are the best thing that ever happened to us. And we were put here for a reason, for love, from love, to love. But the love must first begin with me, because what I see in the world is pretty much how I judge myself. So the final question, last question, and this is the call to action. What are some things we can do to appreciate diversity in our center and our community? what do you feel we can do to appreciate diversity more? Will?
In her book, Stained Glass Spirit, Tracy Brown says diversity is an infinite energy expressing, relating, inspiring, and transforming all. What I encourage you to do is to realize that everyone is a divine expression of God. We're all expressing in our own unique way. There's no right and there's no wrong. Everyone is a unique expression of God. Try to keep that thought in mind anytime you feel that you're about to make a judgment of any sort. We're all human, we slip. But just remember, everyone is on their own spiritual path. It's all right. It's all exactly as it should be. And in the words of Cyndi Lauper, I invite you to let your true colors come shining through. Namaste.
Thank you, Will. Vera, you're next.
Well, I don't have the pop star reference, but hopefully I can leave something as maybe motivating. I don't know. I think I'll take my cue from President Reagan, who's one of his famous lines is "tear down those walls." Of course, he was directing that at the particular individual at that point in time in our history, but it served as a great reference point for me as we were discussing this topic of diversity and inclusion. What walls do I have that I need to work to tear down, right? And it could be something as simple as a perception or a preconceived idea about someone based on the way they present, their gender, their race, the way they speak, or the way they don't speak. What's my wall? What's your wall? I encourage you to look within and ask, well, what is my wall? What is it that I need to do that might encourage me to just open up a little more, embrace someone a little more, learn something a little more about someone, and that will allow us to create synergy, harmony, and just continue to create a world that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Vera. Richard?
In Tracy Brown's book that we've been referencing, she tells about a ceremony that she asks her groups to participate in. And I think it's one that you can participate in without a group situation, but every day in your life. What she has people do is she has them pair off and say namaste, which means the I am in me recognizes the I am in you. And then to look each other in the eye and to have a moment of togetherness. Then move to saying a South African greeting, Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. And then move to the next person and continue that. What I would recommend is that we could do this in our everyday lives, whenever you're in a group situation or just out and about in your work or on the train or in the airport. Is just silently to yourself. Look at others and make that connection on a conscious level of namaste. The I am in me recognizes the I am in you. Ubuntu. I am because we are. And I think that will put you in a consciousness of oneness as you go about your day and make you mindful of that connection that we have. And just remember to release all judgment and to look at others with love and compassion. Love is who we truly are, the true essence of our being. And to look at others and realize that their expression is the divine working through them. And find ways to appreciate that and to recognize it. It may not be for you, but it is their individual expression, and it is God wanting to express through them in that way. So when you recognize that, then you can celebrate it, and that oneness prevails. And in the words of the wise guru Madonna, express yourself and allow others to express themselves as well.
Thank you, Richard. We've had a lot of stars' names mentioned here today. Okay, some of the, and I'm going to piggyback off of some of the things that, Richard, you just mentioned, is that when I greet others, be authentic, be myself. When I'm talking to other people, talk to them, not at them. How I see you is how I see me. Spirit recognizes spirit, and heart touches heart. I learn to speak more from the heart than from the head. And like I mentioned earlier, separation is real only in the mind that thinks it is so. We were created from the all, for the all, to the all. Ernest Holmes quote, "If our human relations are to mean the most to us, we must sense that there is hidden within, around, and through each of us a divine presence manifesting itself in infinite variations. The same impulse, the same love and life, but never quite alike in any two persons." Another one, "There is no individual good. Good belongs to everyone. Good fulfills itself as it multiplies itself. Therefore, there is no good that belongs to you or me alone. No final peace to us as individuals." As we bring this talk to a close, I hope that we as brothers and sisters can understand that we are the best thing that ever happened to us. My thoughts create my reality, and love is the grandest of all gifts. We are the manifestation of God's idea, and that I am God is God as God. We thank you, we love you, God bless you, peace be unto you, and let us stay together, and so it is. Thank you.